But let's stick on this issue of borders and how we recover economically from the pandemic shutdown. I'm joined now from Sydney by the New South Wales Transport Minister, Andrew Constance. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.
Look, you've had to deal with your own issues as Transport Minister this week as people really got back onto public transport in the big way with school going back in New South Wales. Obviously, there were issues there. Obviously, a lot of effort went into it. But you've demonstrated that we can actually function properly in the COVID world.
Absolutely, and I think good leadership in these circumstances is about trying to facilitate, send a message of kindness, and that's what people are doing. They're respecting the physical distancing generally across the network. Obviously, there's some issues where you might get odd crowding, but people know if we're going to get this country going again. And doing it safely so we don't have a second wave of infections, they've got to work together. And I think the respect levels are at an all-time high when people are in survival mode, and there's a key lesson in working together to be able to get through this.
Yeah, well, how does it... What's your take then on these states with their closed borders, particularly Queensland, of course, when you're trying to get the economy going again, because you know that lives and livelihoods are being crushed by the economic consequences, yet Annastacia Palaszczuk seems to just want to shun the rest of the country and turn her back on her own tourist operators?
Well, look, we're one Australia, and we've demonstrated to the world, and we're the envy of the world, in how we've handled this. Look, I think, it's one restriction that's just got to be eased. I mean, for many weeks now, I've had to work through the Transport Infrastructure Council with all the state transport and infrastructure ministers, and including with the national government. And one of the frustrations is the closure of those borders isn't just about those cross-border communities and getting tourism going again. It's about the freight task. So this handbrake on our national productivity by having these borders closed now, it does translate into jobs, and it translates into Queensland jobs as much as it translates into jobs elsewhere. And I think the Queensland Premier has made a fundamental mistake in that at a time when we need to bring all Australians together through this, she wants to obviously try and get through an election later this year. Now, where's the public health advice, which shows very clearly these borders need to remain closed till September? I just think the key element out of this is the best thing that we can do, as we've demonstrated on the Transport Network in New South Wales this week, bring people together, bring Queenslanders, New South Wales, Victoria, everybody together. And we can't have this sort of border closure, which is a handbrake on opportunity. Those poor tourist operators in Queensland, those who want to come down and ski in our winter months and, all of that tourism element, that's one thing. But you're slowing down logistics, you're slowing down freight. We've got to speed the economy up, and we've got to do it safely. But, for the Queenslanders to be sort of Queensland government saying, New South Wales has had the most cases. Well, I just remind everybody, we're the gateway to the nation. Kingsford Smith Airport, that's where we've received, in some cases, Queenslanders coming back into our country. We've done the right thing with quarantining people for 2 weeks. And look at the rates. I mean, they're, incredibly low rates of infection on a daily basis. And I just think, this is time. Those poor people in the Tweed who are going through this frustration every day, those cross-border communities deserve greater care. And that's why I'd appeal to the Queensland Premier to just bring forward this decision, do it with a certainty and clarity, park the politics, because people are just over politics at the moment, and let's get this right.
Are you accusing the Queensland Premier of being divisive for electoral gain?
Well, I understand and understood, particularly at the height of that first wave of infections, why you would put these measures in place. But Victoria and New South Wales and the ACT never did that. I mean, there is the proof why the border should reopen, because we haven't had border closures between our two largest economic states in Victoria and New South Wales and the ACT. We haven't done that. And, that's had, I think a clear demonstration that it's time now to remove that artificial, barrier and just get the place moving again. So, look, it's a message not only to Queensland, it's to all states. We are one country. We're a great people. let's bring people together. Let's not expend any more energy on this argument when our fundamental energies at this time have got to go into those Australians who've got to somehow get their livelihoods back on track. And this is not showing the leadership necessary to do that. And, you know, I heard Pauline before. I mean, those small business people who would love to see $1 in their businesses from tourists from southern states. I mean, your heart's got to go out to those. So I just think let's do this sensibly, and I think there is an opportunity for the Queensland Premier to reflect on that. You know, pot shots over how we've handled it. I mean, you know, we've got one person in ICU, I understand at this time, 15 people in hospital. We've seen 2,600 New South Wales residents recover from COVID. Let's just do this sensibly together, and I think that's where the Queensland Premier's missed the mark a little.
Just finally on another issue, Andrew, Constance, you had that aborted bid for the Eden Monaro pre-selection, Deputy Premier John Barilaro the same. Has Fiona Cotvoys, the woman who ran for that seat at the last federal election and almost won it, and has now ended up getting the pre-selection despite big profile candidates being mooted, has she been poorly treated in this process? And will you be campaigning alongside her?
Of course I will. And let me say this about Fiona and the Liberal Party in the Eden Monaro electorate. They're there because they want to see the community flourish. I can tell you now, the only times that we've seen the members for Eden Monaro be successful is when they're on the government benches. Gary Nairn did it under the Howard years, Jim Snow did it under the Keating and Hawke eras, and Mike Kelly did it when Rudd and Gillard were in office. Now, I think people of Eden Monaro deserve great representation in terms of outcomes. That's where the leadership of Scott Morrison comes into play. And, you know, I think you've got greater opportunities when you have a voice directly on the government benches in Canberra. We've seen that with members over the years. And that's where, certainly in terms of Fiona, she did a great job on the quiet at the general election, where she went within a hair's breadth of actually getting over the line. And so I think ultimately the people of Eden Monaro are very much going to assess the very nature of where the national scene is at, the national leadership on display by the Prime Minister, which his speech today was absolutely magnificent in terms of trying to bring people together and bring the best minds to get out of this crisis. And, you know, I would urge the people of Eden Monaro to consider their vote on the basis of having a member of the government delivering good community outcomes in the same way that I've been able to since we've been in government over the last 9 years at a state level.
Andrew, Constance, thanks so much for joining us.
Good on you, Chris.